So I will add another question. This has to do with education. The specialized high school issue has been a pretty popular issue in our community, in the Asian community. The mandate that a test be used for admission to the specialized high schools is a state mandate. The mayor has proposed keeping the SHSAT for the existing specialized high schools, but opening new specialized high schools using multiple criteria. I would ask, do you agree, disagree, or do you have another opinion on this? And I think we will start with Ms. Fariello. First, I can you first.
Thank you. So this is not an easy answer, because we know that the system we have right now is indeed, it excludes certain demographics in our city. There's no two ways about it. Only 20% of those in specialized high school now are either Black or Latino, and that's a problem. So the test that we're using is not inclusive, it's not allowing for that. Having said that, I am not an educationalist, that's why I adore teachers. I have 4 kids and I can't, like I say all the time, I can't teach them to wipe their face, so I really have incredible respect for teachers. But I think we need to think about having another, even with the current specialized high schools, if we use the test, that's fine, but we also include to the top 10 from the middle schools across the city. So the top 10% students. So we're actually allowing more diversity to come into this. I do think increasing specialized high schools is a great idea. I don't know enough about it. I'd love to hear more. And I think that's really a way that's important. But I also want to everyone to keep in mind that only 4% of our high school students go to specialized high schools. Only 4%. So we really need to be looking at our high schools, the 96% of our students, and making sure that they're getting a good education and that they're getting what they need to be also productive members of our society.
Thank you. I believe I should have went to Senator Kavanaugh first, but I'm sorry.
I'll go next. Okay. Maybe I can do the lightning round faster. I think that, again, this part of the problem here is that a policy of eliminating the current test was announced with virtually no communication with anyone. I actually spoke with the principal of Stuyvesant High School, who learned in the newspaper that the test for Stuyvesant was going to be eliminated as part of the process, rather than hearing about it from the administration. We also know there are 8 specialized high schools. Only 3 of them are required by law to be that test and that test only. The other 5 are at the discretion of the city. It is perplexing that we've been talking about this. We had an administration that wanted to eliminate the test as the sole criteria for those schools, and they had the absolute right to do that for 5 of the schools, and chosen not to do that with respect to any of the schools that they have the option to do that for. I do think that if you want the kind of diversity that my colleague was talking about, you do need to consider other mechanisms. We should not eliminate testing, standardized testing, as an important factor. It is an ability in this giant city to allow people to clearly distinguish themselves as capable of the kind of work that happens at Stuyvesant and other school, which is I'm also proud to represent now. But we need to make sure that it is a system that is fair, it is effective, and we need to recognize that people prep for this for multiple years. You can't be announcing after years of people preparing under a current set of rules that you're changing the rules and people need to do something new. So I think it's an important conversation to have. I will also note that I did not have the privilege of going to one of those schools, any of those schools, but I have colleagues who are members of the legislature who went to those schools who were also not consulted on how the law might change. So I think it is an important conversation to have. I think it is important to try to increase diversity in these schools, but we need to do it fairly, and I think a process that ignores testing entirely doesn't make sense. A process that has only one test as the way to get in is probably not ideal either.
So I serve as the Vice President of Community Education Council, District 2, and I have a long track record defending accelerated education. I think that SHSAT should continue to be the only criteria for these 3 schools, and thank God that it's in the legislature, because otherwise the mayor would have taken out. The same way that he took out all the special admissions for middle schools, and we have seen the impact of that. We now have a lottery. We don't have any more way to find the best schools for each child, and every time the placements comes, I receive so many mails and calls and text messages from parents desperate. My kid is already ready to do Algebra 2, and they are going to a school that doesn't even offer Algebra 1. It makes no sense. We're not serving any kid when we don't find the best school for every child. It is true that only 4% of students are at the specialized high schools. And why is that? Because we have not opened new and more specialized high schools. There is no reason why a city like New York City would have only these high schools that really are making sure that students have access to a very, very accelerated education. In Boston, when I started my career in education over a decade ago, over 20% of the students end up in schools where we require tests. There's no reason why. We know that there are more students that are qualified and capable to go get an accelerated education, and we are not offering this to them. And I think also it's very important to say that in education, the main problem is not a lack of resources. New York City now is spending over $40,000 per student. We spend on average more than double the national average. And for what results? 50% of our kids cannot read at grade level. That's where we need to focus on. That's where Chancellor Banks is focusing on making sure that finally we have a curriculum that follows the science of reading, and our kids are going to have access to phonics.
Thank you.